My name is Greg Barrett, and I am the Executive Director from the Access to Nutrition Initiative. And as part of the Good Food Finance Network Finance Week, we're hosting this in collaboration with our partner, Food Systems for the Future, FSF. And I just wanted to open with a few words about today's session, and also a little bit about what is Access to Nutrition Initiative and what we're trying to do to improve a sustainable, nutritious food system. Firstly, today's session, we're going to discuss nutrition impact as an increasingly important component of food systems transformation, as well as the critical role that investors are playing in this and the critical role of metrics for streamlining how the private sector can get more engaged in food systems transformation. There's an exciting panel, and I'll let my colleague Megan introduce them in a moment. She's moderating, but let me just say a few words about the Access to Nutrition Initiative. I think most of you on the line will agree that sustainable nutrition is in fact the bedrock of human well-being and potential. But meanwhile, we have this major issue with poor diets. It's now a major driver, and by some counts, the major driver of morbidity and mortality around the world. And that's true for high income, for middle income, for low income. The Access to Nutrition Initiative, we exist for only one purpose and one alone. That is, we want to be a major part of transforming markets so that they make foods that are healthy and affordable, accessible to everybody, including the vulnerable. And we do this through three pillars. We benchmark food and beverage manufacturers. We collect data on their practices and their portfolios. That's the first area of work. Secondly, we support policies that help incentivize or penalize the production of healthy foods or unhealthy foods, respectively. And we engage with investors, in particular, the shareholders of the food companies, so that they then make the case back to the boardrooms of food companies that they need to do better to provide nutritious food. So let me paint a picture. If any of you were to walk into a supermarket anywhere in the world and you pick up food from the shelves, a packaged food, these are often highly processed, and 70% of the time, the ingredients in that processed food will have high levels of fat, sugar, or salt, or they'll have low levels of micronutrients. And that is the food environment we're often in. Further, those food items which are unhealthy, the 70% that is in that food environment of a supermarket, they're often cheaper than their healthy counterparts. And then, of course, we know that the levels of food loss and the greenhouse gas emissions that went into the production of those foods, and the plastic packaging is also far, far from optimal. So how do we, improve this situation? We can't have healthy and sustainable diets if you're faced with that kind of a situation when you walk into a grocery store anywhere around the world. Our big strategic goal at Access to Nutrition Initiative is that 50% of healthy foods by 2030 will be 50% of all processed foods by 2030 will be healthy, and that will be up from a baseline of 30% today. And that's where we enter the investor. And I'll just close by explaining what we're doing with investors to make sure that this situation with unhealthy foods changes, and quickly. We've gathered 81 of the world's institutional investors together in a group of signatories on healthy diets. These 81 are from large, say, institutional banks, for example, pension fund, mutual fund holders. They represent $20 trillion of assets under management, or 1/5 of the world's assets under management. They're a powerful group if they can be mobilized to invest in food systems for change and for health. We recently surveyed them to understand, what are the material issues among them, and product profiles, healthiness of products was one of the top priorities for investors moving forward. They want to invest in a healthy food system so that we have a future to invest in. They also want to have more engagement with data, company by company, so that they can target the boardrooms of companies. And we have had some impact working on this agenda. Just in the last year, using ATNI data and working with this investor group, we've seen both Unilever and Nestle come out with disclosures on the healthiness of their product portfolios against government-endorsed profiling models. And this was due to this investor engagement and benchmarking those two companies. So this discussion today is really to look at how we can continue down this track of making sure investments are requiring healthy food is available for all and at a price point that makes sense to all, and that is also sustainable and good on the environment. With that, I pass it on, I believe, to Ambassador Cousins. Has she joined us, Megan?
Hi,
Yes, she
Greg.
has joined.
I am
Okay.
here. So
Very
I apologize. I was having the gremlins of the Zoom system were attacking me, and I could not get into this really important conversation. It is so good to see so many of you here today. Dr. Martin Bloom, what a wonderful opportunity to see you and so many others. This Good Food Finance Week is so critical to catalyzing the conversation that is necessary for us to increase the capital that is required to transform our food system. But when we talk about transforming our food system, too often that conversation is very much around environment. And we talk about land use, and we talk about the issues that the food system creates when related to fresh water draws, as 70% of all of the fresh water draws on an annual basis are from the production across the food system, from farm to consumer use. We talk about the food system's impact on biodiversity. We don't spend enough time talking about the impact that the food system as it operates today and as it's affected by climate, the impact that it has on human health, particularly our nutrition. So because our food system is failing us, because it doesn't feed the global community when we have 828 million people who are food insecure. But our food system, the FAO also tells us that our food system costs 60%, that healthy diets cost 60% more than diets which meet bare minimum nutrient requirements, and almost 5 times as much as an energy dense diet, which meets dietary energy requirements only. Putting it into simple terms, 3.1 billion people today cannot afford a nutritious, diverse diet. When we talk about our food system producing enough food to feed everyone, our food system produces enough calories to support everyone, but not enough nutritious food. When 3.1 billion people cannot access a diverse, nutritious diet, that food system is failing. The ability of the food system to provide the 70% of calories that we consume today from grains, wheat, rice, corn, soy, and potatoes is not enough. And so as a result, what we are witnessing is a disproportionate impact, particularly on vulnerable people, of diet-related diseases. And those diet-related diseases are now, between 2021 and 2023, cost us globally $2.9 trillion. So we know we must do better. We know we must do better now. We cannot continue a dialogue that works to drive additional capital into the food system if we are not also coupling that narrative with the importance of impacting the nutritional health of everyone on this planet, regardless of geography, regardless of income. Instead of simply feeding people, we need to think about nourishing people. We need to think about healthy diets. We need to think about the idea of food is health. Food is health is the paradigm that we should all embrace, removing, and I'm not saying as opposed to or in juxtaposition to food is medicine, because food is medicine is providing healthier foods upon the onset of diet-related disease. Food is health says, let's do it before the onset of diet-related disease. Let's provide the access to affordable, nutritious food. And if, and unfortunately, in too many cases, when diet-related disease occurs, yes, let's use the tools of prescription produce, of medically tailored meals. Those solutions are viable solutions once disease occurs. The conversation we are engaging in with you today is one where we hope that we can begin to transform capital to support food is health, getting the resources that are necessary into the businesses that provide the food assistance from farm to fork that will ensure the ability, the affordability and availability of more nutritious foods. At Food Systems for the Future, this is what we were founded on, this vision of equitably and sustainably transforming our global food system to ensure access to nutritious food for all within this food is health paradigm. We do this by helping create the macro and micro level ecosystems required to scale innovative market-based food enterprises across the value chain. We are symbiotic with Greg and his team at ATNI, where they work with large businesses, we work with small ones through the Good Food Opportunity Fund and the Good Food Opportunity Fund Africa to provide the investments, as well as the wraparound support that will ensure that businesses in our portfolio can deliver on the financial return that investors expect, but also on a measurable nutrition impact, that we are deploying and managing that capital, not just to deliver that financial return, but also to deliver a measurable impact, particularly in underserved communities. That's our work at the micro level. And at the macro level, we work with partnerships and awareness raising and creating those nutrition metrics that Greg was talking about with ATNI, but specifically for performing that initial due diligence with our partner portfolio companies, of their ability to deliver the financial return, but also using those metrics to support the ability of the company to increase the affordability and availability of nutritious foods. And deploying capital against those metrics and then measuring the impact of that capital, of those wraparound services on those businesses' ability to then deliver on that, on those measurements of affordability and availability. Because if we are to successfully increase investments that deliver a nutrition impact, we need to recognize the importance of science-based streamlined metrics for impact measurement and management. Other than that, what we'll find is that the skeptics out there, the critics out there, will simply point to this work and suggest that capital need not flow for nutrition impact because we can't provide the data to demonstrate that the financial investment and the work to support these businesses does make a difference on providing the affordable and more affordable and available food. We've worked and I keep using the terms affordability and availability because we worked with nutrition experts across the globe, our nutrition advisory community, to help us over the last 3 years to achieve the accountability and transparency needed to increase capital towards food systems by building these metrics that will then support a science-based methodology for impact measurement and management. And that was important because before we started this conversation, and many of you who are in this space can attest to this fact, that existing methodologies to incorporate nutrition impact into investment thesis and business strategies are and were limited, inconsistent, and not comprehensively considering the impacts on availability, affordability, and awareness of nutritious foods. So that work that we performed over the last 3 years resulted in the development of these tools, this toolkit, the measurement and management, what we call the IMM toolkit, to inform business advisory services, as well as the Good Food Opportunities Fund's investment process. And our next phase, because we won't succeed as a global community with the success of one fund, one small fund. We won't succeed unless the impact measurements for nutrition are embraced by the entire community of asset managers and owners, as well as by the nutrition community. If we can agree between asset managers and owners, and nutrition experts and advocates on this impact measurement and management tool, we can begin to credibly drive the capital that is necessary to support the portfolio companies and to support entrepreneurs that can deliver on, of course, that financial return, but also on changing the access to nutritious foods, and by meeting and achieving the change that is measured by these tools, and that is delivered by the work of different companies across the system. So that means that our next phase at FSF is an audacious effort, and that is an effort to evolve our existing nutrition impact measurement and management toolkit to maximize its relevance to this broader community that will hopefully utilize this tool to help us move more capital. That's at the basis of our success. If we can't move more capital into this space to drive a measurable return on nutrition, it's all just lip service. It's because today, the most asset managers and owners will tell you what they measure is financial return. But as Greg has said, whether it's our community of companies in the FNHIC that we started with S2G, those companies tell us that what they want is a tool that they can credibly use if they're going to measure impact. What asset managers and owners tell us is, show us the beef, show us the numbers where this capital can make a difference in delivering on the commitment to provide an impact on nutrition. So that's why our next phase is making this an open source tool. We've had so many people tell us you can make lots of money if you made this proprietary. We would rather see lots of money in the space by making this open source, by providing this scientifically valid tool that builds off existing tools, that combines with and supports tools like the ones that ADNI is developing, that is practical, that the asset managers and owners can effectively use, that entrepreneurs can also effectively use to support their work, their operational work inside their businesses, then understanding both the not only what they are measuring, but what they are seeking to change and how they use their own operational capacity to support the change in the metrics of those tools that those tools measure. And that practical tool, that practical open source tool will begin to create the more nimble measurements that we need to ensure that, because we are in conversation with asset managers and owners, the nutrition advocacy and intellectual community, as well as those entrepreneurs and businesses, both large and small, through our partnership with other organizations, that we begin to build a platform of information that not only has credibility within our community, but within the financial community, that will continuously help us move capital, with a goal of ensuring that whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur, that you can monitor, coordinate, and quantify and demonstrate and communicate ultimately the impact that the capital that is invested in a business, the work that is provided to support the business's operation to address those issues of affordability and availability, that it's real. Because increasing the cash capital flows for the transformation of the food system's ability to truly deliver on the vision of food is health requires not just persuasive narratives, but the ability to quantify and measure the change that these investments make. Can we prove money invested in businesses makes a nutrition impact? Can we provide skeptics and critics with the data that is necessary to overcome the challenges of accessing capital from sources that today don't invest in the food and agriculture space? Anything less will quickly be determined greenwashing or nutrition washing. But getting it right will help us increase the amount of capital that flows into the businesses that can make a difference in addressing the challenges of our food system on not just our environment, but on human health, and helping us achieve that ultimate vision of food is health. Thank you.
Thank you, Earthlyn. That was fantastic to hear. I think we're going to jump right into our panel now. As Earthlyn and Greg both kind of talked about, this is an incredibly urgent and important topic. My name is Megan O'Hearn. I am the Impact Director for Food Systems for the Future. And in this role, I'm aiming to accelerate that broader ecosystem that Earthlyn talked about for science-based investing for nutrition impact. I am joined by a distinguished panel of experts representing diverse knowledge and experience spanning large institutional investment in the food and beverage sector, impact investing in sub-Saharan Africa with a focus on small and medium enterprises, food sector sustainable finance in the Japanese markets, and academic perspectives on food systems transformation. I'm very excited to hear from all of these different experts, but we recognize that the audience also has unique perspectives and efforts in this space. We encourage all attendees to share their comments, their questions, their suggestions in the chat to make this an open dialogue. And then we'll try to leave time at the end to respond to those questions. And then we'll close with reflections from the Director of Nutrition and Food Safety from the World Health Organization, Francesco Branca. So let's jump right in. So we have our panel. Can we get the panelists pinned, please? Thank you. Okay, we've got Roberta, Martin joining, we have Arisa, and we have Maria, who are all our panelists. So first, please introduce yourself, your firm or organization, and how you think financial markets can be leveraged to drive nutrition impact. Let's start with Maria, and then we'll go to Roberta.
Thanks, thanks so much, Megan, for the introduction and for inviting me to this event today. So my name is Maria Larsson Ortino. I'm one of the global ESG managers at Legal & General Investment Management. So we are an asset manager. LGIM is a subsidiary of Legal & General Group PLC, which is a FTSE 100 company listed in the UK. So LGIM is the largest asset manager in the UK and the largest pension provider in the UK. In Europe, we're the second largest asset manager, and at a global level, we're probably between 10th or 15th largest asset managers. And our asset under management is 1.4 trillion. Why am I telling you all this? It's to sort of give you a picture of the size and what we possibly can do with that size to contribute when it comes to nutrition and increasing having the companies in which we invest raise those market standards and best practice within those. So in my firm, I work in the investment stewardship team, so sometimes known as the ESG team, if that's helpful, and I lead on our health theme. Our health theme comprises two major pillars. One is antimicrobial resistance, and then nutrition. The reason why we focus on these two pillars is because we deem them to be systemically important. As a universal owner, we hold shares in almost every single listed company at a global level, which means that we are impacted by negative events across multiple sectors. It also means that we can have a positive impact on multiple sectors and on specific companies. Why do we do this? So as a stewardship team and as a role within that, we are stewards of our clients' assets, and we exert influence on the companies in which we invest to improve ESG best practice and standards across multiple sectors. And that is to safeguard and enhance our clients' returns. We also have a responsibility, not just to our clients' assets, but also to the market and broader society. And I think this is where we can really put our weight behind our asks. How do we do that? We do that in two ways, principally, via corporate engagement, so speaking to the companies in which we are investors, having those kind of dialogues where we say, this is what we expect of you, and there are multiple levers. It's not just a conversation, it is how we vote at the annual general meetings at these companies. It is how we speak about them publicly. It is also, we have the opportunity of filing shareholder resolutions when we feel that we have exhausted the levers that we have at our disposal. And the second part is the policy engagement that we can do. So speaking with regulators and policymakers, where we feel that standards could be improved, when it comes to, in this specific instance, nutrition. I think I'll stop there, Megan, and I'm more than happy to speak more about our experience and hand back to you and to the next speaker.
Fantastic. Yes, no, I think your point about having multiple levers and thinking really systemically is really critical, particularly at such a kind of global high level. Roberta, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Thank you, Megan and Maria. And hello, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to join the panel and contribute with our perspective from an NGO point of view. So my name is Roberta Bove. I am working with GAI, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, which is a Swiss-based foundation. Again, I'm the lead for the Nutritious Food Financing Facility, also referred to as NTRIA, which is a program where we work in partnership with an asset manager, Income and Investment Management, and it comprises a nutrition impact investment fund, a technical facility that comes alongside the fund to provide assistance to the companies we invest in, and an impact monitoring component. And when I think about NTRIA, the way we're looking at nutrition is very much aligned with what Etherin was talking about before, like looking at the whole food system in Sub-Saharan Africa. That's where our focus is, where about 70% of the population cannot access healthy diets. And we do so by providing financing to small and medium enterprises that are considered the building blocks of the food systems, particularly as they handle the majority of the food that is consumed locally. And the way we look at and think of nutrition impact focuses on healthy diet, which are the type of diets that are needed to address malnutrition in all its forms. Those rich in nutrient-dense, minimally processed foods like fresh vegetables, fruits, fish, nuts, as well as fortified staples that add nutrients at low cost so that are accessible also and affordable to poorer consumers. And with regards to the majority of SMEs supported by the N3F, through them, we are basically increasing access to this type of nutritious food for local consumption, and therefore increasing access to healthy diets. Though we also have in our pipeline SMEs that produce ready-to-use therapeutic foods that are life-saving essential supply items that treat acute malnutrition in children under 5 years old and have major contracts with UN agencies to reach children in places like Sudan, Ethiopia, and northern Nigeria. So this is basically our approach overall as N3F, how we think about nutrition impact. And I think, when I'm thinking about how obviously when we think about additional private sector capital that can be leveraged for nutrition, obviously WISE are direct impact funds like the N3F, like the initiative that Ertharin was mentioning at the beginning, as well as mostly incorporating nutrition within the ESG, which is probably will be one of the major drivers for change, and is the work that Greg is leading in the sector. So I guess this is just just briefly mentioning who I am, and happy to address more later. So back to you, Megan.
Thanks, Roberta. Hearing that, seeing SMEs as really the building blocks of change in sub-Saharan Africa, and needing to think about how they can address malnutrition in all of its forms is really an interesting way of thinking about leveraging financial markets for nutrition impact. Let's go over to Arisa for your thoughts.
Yes, thank you, Megan. My name is Arisa Kishigami, and it's a pleasure to be on this panel today, probably one of the very few people, even within the audience, coming from the Asia Pacific region. So I'm delighted to be able to contribute. My background, actually, I did a master's degree in African studies and looking at the potential of social entrepreneurs in Nigeria. And after that, spent about 13 years working as the data provider on sustainable investment through FTSE Russell. And currently I work independently and within the role as an independent consultant and thought leader. I sit on a number of committees for the various ministries in Japan in relation to sustainable finance, and I'm happy to share some of the relevant experience later on today. And also as board of the Japan Sustainable Investment Forum. And I think from the various experiences, one thing that's really evident is that investors and lenders are considered obviously as key stakeholders by the companies. And because of that, the engagement aspect of investors is highly critical to mobilize change within the companies. And for that engagement to be effective, the investors need to have the knowledge of both the business and investment case of the specific topic, i.e. with nutrition. And I think in order for the investors to be able to play their role, it's really crucial to have the likes of AT&I to provide those tools, but also academic research as well, such as the Chatham House and their business case for investing and operating in nutrition, or being aware of nutrition as a topic from a business and investor case. And so I'll leave it at there because I think there's lots of other topics to cover today.
Great, thank you, Arisa. And let's jump to Martin.
Hey. No, thanks, Megan. Well, first of all, like what all the other people were saying, is that I'm very pleased to be on the panel, and it's just always nice to listen to Ertan and Greg. Particularly Ertan, of course, because he was my former boss in the World Food Programme. So I'm currently a professor at Johns Hopkins and the Bloomberg School of Public Health, which just became again the #1 in the US again. So it's always nice to see that. So I have focused a lot over the past 6 years on looking at the sustainability of the food system, and then having, of course, indicators looking at nutrition as well as, you know, chronic diseases, but also at the unintended consequences of the food system. And by doing this type of work, I always realized that how complex the food system is, and that we have a lot of lack of standardized definitions. We also have no data. That's why we're working a lot on these different platforms where we try to collect these dashboards, but even those are not very well connected. We always have seen that a lot of the focus is very short term, particularly in the field, of course, of businesses, because they have their shareholders, they have to report every year back. But also that we need to understand that we have to balance, many different multiple objectives, because as a nutritionist, you have a different objective than when you are a business leader, or when you are dealing in finance in general, or whether you work with WHO or you work for World Food Program. Even then, even when you both are interested in making nutrition better, you have a different angle. So we need to realize that we have all different lenses, but that we need a kind of common metrics, so that we can all say, okay, let's have common metrics so that we can do something about it. And that's I feel, as an academic, but actually coming from the practice for a long time, of course, I feel there is definitely need much more interaction between the different groups, without trying to convince the others that you have the only answer, because nobody has the real answer. We need to work together to find, what I said, metrics, at least metrics already, where we can all agree upon. And they never will be perfect, but at least we can work with them. I think, let me stop now.
Great, thanks, Martin. What I'm hearing from you is, the need for collaboration and common metrics to be able to think about the complexity of food systems impacts on nutrition and health. So I think moving forward, I think increasingly malnutrition is being viewed as a global systemic risk, with implications for national as well as global GDP growth. And the private sector is also acknowledging the significant business risks of poor nutrition. That includes government regulatory demands, such as taxes and procurement standards. In 2022, we saw that there were 47 sugar-related taxes globally versus only 31 carbon taxes. There's also mounting reputational risks for businesses that are trying to block different anti-obesity measures, banning things like the promotion of sugary breakfast cereals and the impacts that has on the industry. We also see growing consumer demands for healthier and more transparent and more authentic foods, and mounting financial costs of diet-related disease, including direct healthcare spending, as well as worker productivity. And we're also seeing new financial market regulations, particularly in Europe, requiring investors to quantify and disclose the impacts of their investments on the environment and society. So I want to ask the panelists, which of these business risks, which also can be seen as opportunities for companies that capitalize on this on these issues, to kind of create a healthier food system, which of these risks kind of most resonate or speak to the challenges that you face with your kind of business or your organization? Why are you thinking about measuring nutrition impact? Why is it important to you? Maybe we switch it around a little bit. Arisa, do you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. So let me take perhaps a little bit of a different angle. So, given I think you would like my contribution from the region, and thinking from a Japan perspective, I think there's a risk of being caught out. And what I mean by that is, if you look specifically towards the Japanese market, in relative terms, the regulatory sort of framework may not be as stringent as other markets. And at the same time, in relative terms, the nutrition sort of balance of the Japanese population may be in better terms to other markets as well. So because of that, you could find that both the companies and investors could become complacent based on the current situation in the domestic market. but the Japanese companies could be impacted by, heightened regulations in other markets that both the investors and the companies need to be aware of, but also the fact that they are going to be impacting the nutritional aspects of the markets that they operate in as well. So there's the regulatory risk from that perspective. And then I think the other sort of potential risk is about the demographic changes and how that impacts the definition and focus of a nutritional diet, and whether you're focusing on infant nutrition versus a aging population, and balancing that out both from a business perspective and the reality in the different markets.
Thanks. No, that's a great point about the potential for complacency in a market that is doing relatively well, and also the need to consider the demographic shifts. Maria, do you want to go ahead?
Absolutely. And I think what Arisa just said really echoes with how we look at nutrition. I think when it comes to measuring, we come from a completely different angle. And what I mean by that is, as investors, we need to be able to measure in order to, or have measurements and data that is both verifiable and comparable. And that is because our universe of investment is so large that's impossible for us to look uniquely at each company. We need to have some kind of measurements to be able to compare the different companies in which we hold shares, but also to be able to pull out those laggards. So the bottom of the pile, and maybe even more so in the middle of the pile of companies, where we can ask them very specifically what we need them to do. And by doing that, you can also incentivize a pulling up of the standards within the whole sectors. If you've got a few movers, the rest will sort of follow on to that. You should usually take out, the bottom laggards, they won't move anyway. And the top leaders, they are already moving. So you sort of want to hit that. And in order to be able to do that, you need the data to be able to do that. And that's where the measuring of the data is so crucial for us. And also to be able that it's comparable, both verifiable, so that we are comfortable with the data and that you can compare it. And if I sort of the ATNI data and the fact that we can use that data and work a lot with ATNI makes a huge difference. That covers obviously 25 of the largest food and beverage companies. Our holdings is much larger than that. And that those 25, it's important to note that 5 of them are private companies, so not publicly listed companies. But I think that is really important. If I can just add on a couple for us, as far as the risks that we see for companies, it is the companies with a very high revenue exposure, so have a lot of revenue coming from unhealthy products, are likely to face both increasing regulation on the products, but also limitation on the marketing of their unhealthy foods. And that is how we can have the conversation with those companies saying, you're not a long-term viable investment. And one last point, if I may, to link back a bit to what Martin was saying, it's the long-term that you have timeline horizon that you need to be in on. And I think that's exactly what we can do as more what is known as an index house, that we invest in so many companies. We are in it for the long term. We don't, we can't sell off holdings just because we don't like them. And that is, I think, makes a big difference in how we can speak to companies and come back year after year. So just to add on if that's helpful. So back to you, Megan. I hope I didn't.
Yeah, no, Maria, that was great to hear kind of your thoughts on thinking about long-term kind of viable investments and the need to kind of measure companies that in a comparable and viable way. Martin, any thoughts from your end?
Yeah, I would like to make 3 comments if I might. Like, it's all related, but it's about the NCDs, because we all know that we can talk about nutrition, but 70% of the people in the world are dying from NCDs. So we have to focus on NCDs, and I see nutrition as an intermediate, very important intermediate, of course. So if you think about, if you're doing historical analysis of the food of the food companies, they were very effective in selling, in fact, products over the past 50 years. And based on the fact that they said they understood that fat sugar, and salt were important ingredients to sell to people, and they were extremely effective. So you can't say they were not, they were effective. So we know now, of course, that those ingredients are not very healthy. And now the problem is, so, a couple of months ago, we were on the same panel and with Greg, and it's very, even when the companies want to change, they have, I would say, like they have taught the audience that in fact these products are really nice. So now if they want to withdraw some sugar content of products, they cannot do it because in fact the public doesn't want to accept it. So they have to do, it costs them years and years to actually change those products. And of course they make a lot of money out of, not a lot, but at least it's part of the business model. So it's not very easy. This is important to understand because we have a chance in low and middle income countries not to fall in the same trap. So that's my first comment I would like to make. The second is that if you look at the WHO and the science, and particularly in the field of NCDs, looking into the SDGs, so they want to be effective, and so they made the analysis recently. A Lancet Countdown paper showed very clearly that if you want to focus on the nutrition component within the NCDs, you only focus on alcohol, salt, and sugar. Not going into all the components of a healthy diet. So from the analysis perspective, that's correct. But if I talk to Francesco, he will say, well, and me too as a nutritionist, that's not enough. That's not a healthy diet. That's products who are less content of salt and sugar and alcohol, but it doesn't mean that you have a more healthier diet. However, from a cost-effective perspective, and it's actually the right way to go. So is it contradicting what we would like to do? I don't think it's contradicting, but it put, in fact, a different message out that that's enough for nutrition. It's not enough for nutrition. And I forgot what I have to do at the third comment. It's my age. So
no, if it comes to you, let us know. No, I think that point about the, trying to be as cost effective as possible and simplify it down to, okay, this salt, alcohol, sugar as problems, when in reality, a healthy diet is far more complex, is a great point to bring up. So I'm conscious of time. I think we're going to go to our last question, so that we can have time for Francesco to give his closing remarks. Let's talk very briefly about the practical challenges in this space. Maria kind of brought up the idea of needing metrics and metrics that are comparable and viable, but there's also issues around data and around having the technical expertise. So the Good Food Finance Network's Metrics Catalyst Group recently published a briefing on metrics for sustainable food systems investments that talks about kind of these challenges in measuring progress for sustainable food systems, not necessarily about nutrition and health specifically, but kind of about the broader kind of all different types of impact areas or outcomes. It also talked about kind of the needs and opportunities for developing new metrics and the need for cross-sectoral collaboration. So in your work, what challenges do you observe in terms of finding for nutrition impact, whether that's metrics, access to data, technical capacity? So maybe just 1 minute from each of you on this. Maybe we start with Roberta.
Sure, thanks, Megan. Happy to jump in. I think it's like, and I think this goes back to the initial statements, and that it feels like kind of everyone is highlighting how we are missing agreed upon metrics and tools for investing in nutrition, while other sectors, for example, in the field of climate and agriculture investing, might have gone a little bit ahead. I think nutrition is still lagging behind. And this is one of the reasons why GAIN has been putting a lot of effort into this, particularly ahead of the launch of our N3F investment fund. We've done a lot of work on developing screening tools for screening nutrition SMEs, as well as developing a theory of change and metrics for monitoring the impact on nutrition as we intended in terms of healthy diets. And what we've done is that we've also, we thought it was important for us to start sharing some of our approaches with the broader food and nutrition community. So our expert submitted a paper on the N3F food screening approach to the Journal of Nutrition, which was peer-reviewed, and that enabled us to further improve our metrics and is publicly available. And our ambition overall is to basically keep working on these tools that we're using, which at the moment we are fine-tuning as we work together with an asset manager, Incofin. We're fine-tuning them as the investment team is using them for the pipeline building process. We aim at keep doing that for the first year that the fund will be live in terms of the tools to select the investment as well as the monitoring. And once we fully fine-tune them, our objective is very much to share them and hopefully work with in embedding them with the into existing frameworks such as the IRIS and the GIN. Because the ultimate goal is that multiple asset managers can use this tool, not just obviously our partner that at the moment will be launching the fund with, but the goal will be that all asset managers should have access, because that way we can actually get more capital into the space, looking at this, the agriculture, not just as agriculture, but kind of looking at having a nutrition lens.
Perfect. Thank you, Roberta. Arisa, do you want to just give one quick thought on the challenges that you see? I know, sorry to kind of have to cut you off, but we're getting close on time.
Yes, just very quickly. So I think one challenge is the fact that the food industry can be quite fragmented and complex, and the direct interaction with both consumers and investors can be quite limited in terms of listed large companies. And just to provide quickly, the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fishery in Japan recognized this challenge and recently launched a guidance for companies, not the top tier, but the tier below them, to help them understand what are the ESG issues, including nutrition, that need to be addressed. What are the existing metrics and initiatives, including AT&I, that are out there that they should be aware of. And just to share with all of you today that there is a plan to translate this into English by the end of Q2, so that the supply chain within emerging markets, for example, that are linked to those Japanese companies can access that with the common language as well.
Thank you. Martin?
Yeah, I went over the document. It's a good starting point, I would say, but you know, it needs a lot of work and it needs a lot of translation too, you know. So I work on a dashboard, for example, with WFP, which should collect both climate impact and the cost of the diet, and that dashboard really works in a sense, you know, in low middle income countries, but how it can be translated in what it means is not always easy. And I feel so this work, I don't think will have the impact, because you have to get away from, you know, the goals are so high. And the reality is that you have to have, you know, small steps to reach those goals. And if we don't create small steps for companies to work on and be, you know, be practical, then it will not work. So.
Yep. Small steps rather than trying to have ambitious goals, but steps to get to that goal.
Yeah.
Maria, any final thoughts from you?
No, I think I would just end with on what I said previously: access to data that's reliable and comparable.
Very good point.
Thank you, Maria. And I know we could all talk about this probably for several more hours, and I wish that we had that time. But I'd like to hand it over to Francesco Branca to give his closing remarks and reflections on this session on nutrition impact. Maybe we can have him pinned.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Megan, and nice to be here with you today. So I'd like to connect what Greg and Earthlyn were saying at the beginning. You know, we're really dealing with the dysfunctional food system, and I think everybody is in agreement to that. I think we're learning that investment can leverage change, and I think this is the important starting point of this conversation. But in order to do this, I think we need to have a clear vision of what the outcome of this transformation is going to be. So we mentioned access to healthy diet. What does that mean? It means adequacy, And we know that adequacy of nutrient is a problem, particularly in low and middle income countries, but we also mean non-communicable disease prevention. We need balanced nutrients. So that has to be clarified. And I think, we have a clear responsibility to give that exact message. Now, why food industry is important? Because clearly processing of food is having an increased role. I mean, there's more and more countries where the proportion of food purchased is 60-70%. So what are the asks to the food industry? And so far we have been very moderate in our ask. We've been asking to bring down the sodium. We've asked to remove industrial trans fat. We're starting to say we want to bring down the sugars, or actually the sweetness of the products. But that is probably only part of the story. I think there must be other kind of asks. We have to make asks about the nature of the products. We need to make asks about the availability and accessibility of the product. We need to make asks about using a food system approach about the production systems. This has to be connected to sustainability on the one hand, but also it has to be connected to the livelihoods. I mean, what about the intensive food productions? I mean, are they compatible? So I think that kind of transformation can be definitely induced with an adequate kind of investment. Now, how to leverage this investment? I mean, investors are there to have a return on their investment, and the return needs to be well defined in terms of in monetary terms, but also in terms of public health returns. How to do that? I mean, I heard in the conversation today the mention of the regulatory environment, and I clearly think that has to go hand in hand with the investment choices. Now, WHO advocates for public policies to shape the food environment through, labeling, marketing, fiscal policies, and we're seeing an increasing number of countries who's actually doing that. So I think that is something that we can have as a component of that. But we also need to make sure that part of the good practices of the company is not to interfere with public policy making. The other important component there is public investment. Public investment will be able to support and facilitate private investment. Subsidies policies are a major public investment. They are not serving the purpose of currently changing the food system in the direction we want to see. So that change in the subsidies policies, and if you've seen the good analysis done by the State of Food Security and Nutrition report this year, that's something to be done. But also public investment that can make this private investment go into a virtual loop. I'm thinking, for example, of all the public food procurements that have a major responsibility in deciding what actually gets produced. I heard about data and metrics, and I do agree that that is a key element. Looking at the existing metrics, the more sophisticated the metrics are, the less companies are able to meet them. So I think the point that was made about the stepwise approach is critical. I think we need to have a clear understanding of where we want to go, but then we need to have an understanding of the processes required and how these steps can take place in a way that we don't lose the system in the process. There are interesting efforts there to look at the metrics, to look at also the outcomes we have to be looking at. It's actually not just necessarily the health, but also the livelihoods. It's the social disparities which we need to look at. The stock taking process that is following the UN Food System Summit that is going to take place in July will be an interesting opportunity to showcase some virtual practices, But from the WHO point of view, I really would like to say that we look forward to engaging with the network here and finding ways to offer solutions for a better action on food finances. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Branca. That really fascinating and I think a great summary of the challenges that are ahead. Thinking about how do we expand the conversation from just thinking about changing the amount of sugar and salt in our products to comprehensively thinking about ways that we can improve the food system in terms of the affordability and availability and awareness of nutritious foods, and also thinking about the livelihoods of individuals and workers across the food system value chain. So thank you so much for your thoughts, and thank you everyone on our panel and our audience for your interest in this topic. And we hope to continue the conversation on the need for responsible investing and food systems transformation that involves both positive financial returns as well as nutrition impact. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, goodbye.